Welcome to 558 Parkside Tech, where we talk about tech's past, present, and the future of tech. Today we're talking about the cloud. And as always, here at 558 Parkside, we strive for progress, not perfection. So all you 558ers, future tech creators, let's get to it right after this, discussing the cloud.
558 Parkside Tech in effect. 558 Parkside Tech in effect. 558 Parkside Tech in effect. Park, son.
Today we're talking about the cloud, and this is our one-on-one series on the cloud. But before we begin, let's get into a definition of terms. Whenever I say on premises, I'm talking about a company who has its computer center or data center on site within the building, or maybe here they have a third-party company that's housing it, which is considered they're maintaining it. When I say hybrid, I'm talking about combining two different elements, and you'll know about what I really mean as the conversation goes on. Now, there are many different cloud platforms. Today I'm covering the Microsoft Azure cloud, but there's the Google Cloud, the AWS cloud, the IBM cloud. There's so many clouds out there, but that's the one I'm going to cover today. But pretty much they're similar as far as their actual setup. In the past, even currently, some companies, what they used to do was they had to forecast in the future how many servers they need, how much data they were going to process, how much business they were going to have in the future. And every time toward the end of the year, they would get around and determine how much money they were going to spend. And that's how they handle purchasing servers for their business. And at that point, you would have to worry about maintaining the servers, keeping them cool. So you had to hire a staff. You have patching. You had to update the software. The same way you update the software on your personal computer, that server would have to be updated. And you would have to constantly hire people to do this task year after year. Now, to break down the three layers that are necessary to make an application run in production, you'd have to first deal with the infrastructure. That is the virtualization, the VMs of it, the servers, the memory, the motherboard, the CPU. You'd have to deal with the storage, whether it be hard drive or solid state drive. You have to deal with networking, routing, and switching. On the platform layer, you'd have to determine, am I going to use IIS, or I'm going to use Docker, or what kind of middleware am I going to use? What kind of operating system am I going to run? Am I going to run Windows? Am I going to run Linux? And that's before you even deal with putting your app on there and running your data at the application level. So with the 2005, 2006 up to 2011, what happened then? There was this boom in cloud platforms, just a boom.
Boom, bam, bop, bada bop, boom, pow.
And bam, so many things this cloud platform would offer you so that you no longer had to have your own personal data center. It allowed you to reduce staff. No need to cool the server because you don't have one, so you save money there. You didn't have to patch anything, you didn't have to service anything, and the key point is you pay as you go. Now, I'm not going to get into the security, local redundancy, global redundancy. I'm not going to get into that in this discussion because this is just 101. But I want to show you what happened when this cloud platform started emerging and the benefits that it offered us. There's a data model or development models that you can use. There are three of them. There's public, hybrid, and private clouds. And then you break that down into service models. And there are three of them also. There's infrastructure as a service, or you hear people say IaaS. There's PaaS, or PaaS, which is platform as a service. And then there's SaaS, which is software as a service. Now, what you'll find is a lot of companies will use either or. Some companies will use IaaS to move their application if they want to quickly get to the cloud. And then some companies might want to put their data in the platform as a service, as in PaaS. But we'll get into that a little bit further as we go on. So now, if you choose infrastructure as a service, all you're going to have to worry about is your software and your platform. You don't have to worry about your infrastructure. So you're just going to have to determine, and this is why most companies use this, because if they've been running their applications on a mainframe or on a server, they've already had to figure out whether they're going to use Windows or Linux. They've already figured that out. They already know what their middleware is. They already know what their runtime is going to be. And obviously they know their applications and they know their data. So that's why infrastructure as a service is something that most companies will lend itself to. That's kind of a quick jump to the cloud solution. Now, if you decide to use PaaS, platform as a service, what are you worried about? You're mainly just worried about your application and your data. And now the cloud providers will actually handle your infrastructure and your platform. Now you'll see a lot of companies will do this if they just want to run their database real quick. It's easier to use PaaS because your infrastructure and your platform are handled for you. You don't have to worry about it. All you have to worry about is your application and your data. Straightforward. You don't have to know anything about anything else. Your cloud provider's job is to handle that for you. All your patching and updates for these different layers. So now let me give you a bird's eye view so you don't get confused. So even if you're on a public cloud, you can choose one of the three: IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS. Okay? Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. Or you can choose the hybrid cloud. Same thing. You can choose IaaS, PaaS, or software as a service. Same thing with private. So you don't lose anything as far as the models are concerned when you move to any one of these clouds. But your company or you, if you're moving your application to the cloud, has to determine which one works best for you. Now, software as a service, I didn't talk much about, but you use it every day. If you use Teams or you use WebEx or Trello or Zoom or DocuSign or Salesforce, that's software as a service. You just use the software. There's nothing for you to do. You just use the software and you pay for the licensing of it. Now let's talk about migration approaches and moving to the cloud. There's a term called lift and shift. Management usually loves this term. They love using this because they can quickly get to the cloud. This is where you take your existing code, existing services, your storage, and you just migrate it to IaaS using VMs. And you usually say you're going to redesign your application in the cloud in the future, which usually never happens. But that's a conversation for at another time. But then you have what they call multi-tenant, which is where you redesign your application and support multi-tenant. This means migration approach where you might move some things into IaaS and you might move some things into PaaS or PaaS, okay? In some cases, usually your application you'll move to infrastructure as a service, and you would use PaaS or PaaS for your data, and that's what they call multi-tenant. Or you have what they call cloud native. That's where you redesign your application in place so that you can move it to the cloud, okay? It's already built for the cloud. You usually don't have that. Most people want to get to the cloud. They don't want to revamp something that's already working. They just want to get in the cloud so they can make use of some of the other services that the cloud has to offer and performance. So what do you need to know when you move your application to the cloud? After you've selected your development model and your service model, the one thing that threw me was resource groups. It took me a minute to grasp this concept. So I want to share that with you in this discussion. The thing to understand is the management of your groups. So the first thing you have, if you're a company or if you're a person, you get an Azure subscription or a subscription to the cloud, you're going to have a subscription. It's going to have a name. If your name was John, it might be John's subscription. Then you're going to have a resource group. In this example, I'm calling the resource group Billing 1. So you create a resource group called Billing 1. Now, under that resource group, you have resources, things that you're going to use to build your application. Okay, you've got a topology. You're going to go through that and determine what do I need. And in this case, you're going to create VMs for billing. You're going to have billing services, and you're going to have a billing database. So now all of those would roll up to a resource group called billing. The reason why that's important is that when you get through with this resource or this resource group, you can delete it, and it deletes all the resources that are under it. And it's a good way to manage your resources because they're all in one place. How you go about selecting a resource group, I've kind of given you the steps here. And in another episode, I'm going to go into Azure and actually walk you through doing it. But in this case, you go to the Azure portal, you would select resource group, you would do a create, you would select the subscription that it belongs to, and you would create a resource group name. You would select the Azure location, which I will talk about in another episode when creating storage accounts. You would hit review, create, and now you have a resource group by which to roll up your resources. So what did we cover? In this quick one-on-one series, I covered that oftentimes the cloud is a money saver for most companies and startups. You pay as you go, meaning you get more storage as you need it versus in the past you having to determine how much you needed and actually buying it in advance. I also talked about the 3 development models: public, hybrid, and private. And the 3 service models are IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, or infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. I also kind of gave you a brief introduction into how you manage your resources in the cloud. I also spoke about the hybrid cloud, which is a combination of a public and private cloud, or it's a public or private cloud connecting to a non-cloud solution. Now, out of scope of this conversation for our Cloud 101, I didn't talk about the cloud security, the advantages of a load balancer, RBAC, which is role-based, access control, which gives each individual on the team certain access to certain things. I didn't talk about VM scaling or geo redundancy or local redundancy, where if you're on the mainframe, that does away with your disaster recovery efforts. And there are many other things that make the cloud platform a good solution for any topology. Thank you for joining me today, and if this topic on the cloud was of benefit to you, please feel free to subscribe and hit the like button. As always, be better than your best excuse and continue to learn tech. I'm your Tech Plug Mike, and that's all for today. Peace.
Yeah, 558 Parkside Tech in effect, 558 Parkside Tech in effect, tap in the future. Let me introduce you. 558 Parkside Tech, about to school ya. 558 Parkside Tech in effect, 558 Parkside Tech in effect, 558 Parkside Tech in effect, Park, son.